A new report is offering a behind-the-scenes look at the rocky rollout of President Trump's original travel ban. Betsy Woodruff of the Daily Beast writes, quote, "On the chaotic day the Trump administration's travel ban went into effect, high-level Homeland Security officials directed their staff at airports around the country to stiff-arm members of Congress and treat lawyers with deep suspicion." Betsy Woodruff joins me now from Washington. Really interesting reporting, Betsy. I know, many people characterize the rollout as perhaps not well thought out, perhaps chaotic. But your reporting indicates that maybe it wasn't so chaotic as one might have thought, or perhaps it was chaotic by design. What do you mean when you say Homeland Security officials were directed to stiff-arm members of Congress during the implementation of the travel ban?
What that means is that there were internal communications going on between high-level DHS officials about what to do as the travel ban was being rolled out. We obtained a tranche of emails through a Freedom of Information Act request. And from going through those emails, we're able to put together kind of a picture of how DHS officials scrambled to find a way to implement and then to monitor the implementation of the travel ban. They clearly were caught off guard, caught back on their heels. And at one point, an email that really stood out to me, one high-level DHS official emails others saying, "Make it very clear to your people at airports that they are, all caps, not to talk to members of the media or to members of Congress." Senator Cory Booker, in fact, when he tried to talk to CBP officials at Dulles Airport, actually couldn't even have a face-to-face conversation with them. He had to write them notes on a piece of paper, give those notes to, I believe, a police officer who then carried them back into a back room where CBP officials were essentially hiding out from any sort of communication with members of Congress.
Yeah, saying don't talk to the media, that's nothing new. We're sort of used to that. But lawmakers, I'm sure they were taken aback. What sort of reaction? You've spoken to lawmakers. What sort of reaction are they having to your reporting?
Lawmakers thought that the emails we obtained were really revelatory because they showed how organized and how strictly enforced this ban on talking to members of Congress was. Now, DHS says that it's normal for their employees not to be allowed to talk to Congress and that members of Congress were directed to their Congressional Affairs Division. But members of Congress told me that when they reached out to Congressional Affairs, when they tried to call them in the first 24 to 48 hours of the travel ban, that the Congressional Affairs team hung up on them. And the lawmakers also said that they should have been able to have casual in-person conversations with CBP officials at airports. The idea that a member of Congress couldn't just say, "How are you doing? What's going on here?" without some sort of high-level DHS official telling them not to is something that the members I've chatted with found just deeply disturbing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I remember the day that the travel ban was implemented. People were stopped as they arrived at airports, and lawyers descended on many of the airports to try and help those people navigate the system. And in your reporting, you say that, Customs and Border officials essentially just made the decision to ignore those phone calls from lawyers who were attempting to protect the rights of people. That must have contributed to the chaos because, lawyers couldn't even get any answers for hours.
Right, without a doubt. And there was actually a court order in place for the Dulles airport that said the lawyers who went to the airport there had a right to speak with people who were being detained because of the travel ban. But CBP officials at Dulles never let any of the lawyers who showed up at the airport actually go back and speak with folks who were detained. That's something that the Inspector General is looking into now. It's something that a lot of members of Congress found very disturbing. And remember, part of the reason that lawyers wanted to talk to people who were being detained so badly was because some of the folks who were held up because of the travel ban were presented with a form called Form I-407. That's a form that you sign to basically give up your green card. By signing that form, you cede your right to live in the United States. So these people weren't just temporarily sent back to their countries of origin. In some cases, people in a very frightening and chaotic situation were given a form where they actually lost their right to live in the U.S. and they weren't able to talk to lawyers before signing it.
Yeah, right. And many not speaking not English as a first language anyway.
Right.
So we know that the Supreme Court recently allowed a narrower version of the travel ban to go into effect, and that they'll be hearing the case in October. So could these directives factor into the Supreme Court's decision?
I don't know that I could go so far as to say they'll be part of the Supreme Court's decision, because this related to that first iteration of the travel ban. But they're certainly part of getting a better picture of the relationship between the executive branch, which includes DHS, and Congress. That's an important separation of powers issue. There's a constitutional issue some members of Congress raised to me, which was they believe they have a constitutional duty, an obligation to oversee the executive branch. That includes DHS. And this email showed that the DHS officials were doing their best to make it hard for members of Congress to do that.
Very interesting stuff. Betsy Woodruff from the Daily Beast. Thank you so much, Betsy.
Of course.